Today, we're going to deconstruct a really fascinating modern text called Le Manifeste de l'Inadapté, or in English, the Misfits Manifesto. What it does is offer a pretty sharp critique of our society, especially when it comes to work, and it really taps into this feeling of alienation that a lot of people seem to be experiencing.
So, here's our game plan. We'll start by defining who the manifesto is talking about, the misfit. Then we'll dig into the core problem it identifies, this so-called paradox of modernity. From there, we'll look at its proposed solution, the philosophy of the anchor, see how that's put into practice with the pillars of sovereignty, and we'll wrap up with the journey it maps out for us, the path of emancipation.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning with the key figure in this whole text, l'inadapté, or the misfit. Now, it's really important to get this right away. The manifesto isn't using this term as an insult. It's actually redefining it completely.
So, according to the manifesto, the misfit isn't a failure in the traditional sense. Not at all. This is someone who feels a fundamental disconnect, a sense that their own potential, their own spirit, is just too big for the small, rigid boxes that society and our careers try to squeeze us into. They're the ones who can have everything and still feel like something crucial is missing.
Now let's get to the core problem this text is trying to tackle. It calls it the paradox of modernity. And it's basically this deep contradiction that sits right at the heart of our modern world.
So here's the paradox. On the one hand, the system has delivered on some huge promises, right? We have social peace, incredible infrastructure, stability. But on the other hand, the manifesto argues that all of this came at a cost, that the human factor got lost along the way, leaving us with a life that often lacks real meaning and work that doesn't feel like a true contribution.
In response to this paradox, the manifesto doesn't call for tearing everything down. Instead, it proposes something more personal, a philosophy for finding your own stability and then acting from that solid ground. And the central metaphor for all of this is the anchor.
You see, our modern world is described as this chaotic ocean of data, just a constant, overwhelming flood of information, notifications, and noise. In the middle of all that chaos, the anchor isn't about being stuck. It's about having a tool that keeps you oriented, that keeps you from getting swept away.
The philosophy is actually called ANCRA, which comes from the Latin word for anchor. And that choice is very intentional. It's meant to call up this ancient idea of the anchor as a symbol of salvation, the one thing that can hold you steady when the currents are trying to pull you in a million different directions.
This whole philosophy is built on three main ideas. First, you anchor yourself in real deep knowledge, not just fleeting information. Second, you build up a resistance to that constant distracting flow of trends and noise. And third, once you're anchored and stable, you use that position as a point of leverage to make precise, impactful moves.
Okay, so we have the philosophy. But how do you actually do it? Well, this philosophy gets translated into a very practical framework for taking back control, which the text calls the Trinity of Sovereignty.
This path to sovereignty or self-rule has 3 steps. First is all about time. You take back your time by letting things like AI handle the chaotic, repetitive stuff. The second is about your mind. You achieve cognitive clarity by ruthlessly cutting out all the digital noise. And those first 2 pillars are what make the third one possible. Finally, being able to move from work you just endure to work that you choose, a contribution that's actually meaningful to you.
Finally, the manifesto lays out a clear journey for the individual. It doesn't see this as something that happens overnight. Instead, it's a structured 3-stage transformation.
You know, this journey looks a lot like the classic hero's journey. It starts with inadaptation. That's the awakening, when you see the system's flaws with total clarity. That leads you to alchemy, where you stop being a victim of technology and start collaborating with it, learning to pilot AI to gain real power. And it all culminates in sovereignty, a state of freedom where you're no longer just trying to survive, but you're free to make the contribution you were meant to make. This quote really gets to the heart of the whole thing. It's about a fundamental shift. You stop just following the external rules of the system and start operating by your own internal, deliberately chosen protocols.
And the text leaves us with this powerful call to action. It completely reframes our goal. It's not about trying to find a place to fit into the existing world. It's about actively building your own space, a space defined by you, by your own rules, and by your own meaningful work.
So, this entire analysis brings us to a really provocative question, one that's incredibly relevant today. As AI and automation weave themselves deeper into our lives, what does freedom truly mean? Is it just about not having to work anymore? Or is it something more? Is true freedom actually the power to direct these incredible new tools with intention, to reclaim our focus, and to finally become the masters of our own contribution to the world?